right? And hence called spatial enumeration or spatial occupancy enumeration. And there were two types there. One where we used the old school, high school technique of finding areas of arbitrary objects by embedding it on a graph paper and then filling out the graph cells that are occupied by the object, right? So that is something that you are all familiar with. And that's one representation. The other one is an adaptive version of that, where we don't start with a very fine grid of cells, but rather start with a large cube and keep dividing the cell only where we need it. Okay, meaning that if my volume is occupying a complete cell, in this case 1/8 of a cube, then I won't subdivide it further, right? And therefore you get a slightly more concise representation. In this case, you have to only store 4 cells, of course, of 2 different sizes, right? And that makes it a little convenient in terms of storage. But as we said, the problems with this approach is that A, of course, is accuracy. It is always going to be approximate. And second, which is a more important restriction because of our interest in constructing models, is that it is very painful to construct an object like this, representation like this ab initio, meaning from scratch, right? You cannot keep shading cells, that you think will form your object. That is a huge effort involved in doing that. And therefore, this is not a good technique for us to do ab initio construction. And so we go on to the next type of construction that we wanted to, representation that we wanted to look at. And that is something that involves a representation of a solid in somewhat similar to the way we represented the trimmed surface patch. Okay, and which was that we represent the boundary of the object, and like we did in the case of the trimmed patch, an oriented boundary. So it is not just normal, just the boundary, but also the orientation. Now in 2D, the boundary is a curve or an edge, and the orientation of the traversal is the orientation of that edge. In 3D, right, we have the normal to the surface is the orientation, surface is the boundary, and normal to the surface is the orientation, right? And then we sort of broke this down a little further, saying that my objects don't have a single boundary, right? Rather, I have a bounding surface which consists of a set of patches on the boundary, right? And we introduced a qualifier to that, what we called as quasi-disjoint, meaning that these patches touch each other only at their boundary. So if you go back and look at the example of the cube or the brick, right? I have a discontinuous bounding surface. It's not like a sphere anymore. I have 6 bounding patches, right? And each patch touches the other only at its boundary, namely the edge, right? So that's the representation. And the boundary of the surface patch itself can be represented as a curve. And again, I can have the bounding curve to be a single curve, as in the case of a cylindrical surface, or a discontinuous set of curves, as in the case of a cube, right? And therefore, an analogous representation follows. Just like I have bounding surface as a set of patches, I have a bounding curve as a set of curves, and they constitute what we refer to as edges, right? And each edge, in turn, is bound by 2 vertices, the 2 endpoints, which completes the boundary representation. Okay, so that's the boundary representation that we are looking for, where we have the object, but now for the first time, right? Actually, not the first time, trimmed surfaces, we have already experienced this. There are 2 parts to this representation scheme, right? My face, the edge, and the vertex, each of which constitutes my boundary, right? They have 2 parts. We've already seen this for the face, where one part is the geometric representation, which is the representation of the underlying surface. The second part is the list of edges that constitute the boundary of the object, of the face, right? And likewise, the edges in turn, right, can have geometry associated with that. which is the equation of the curve, and the boundary of the curve in the form of the two vertices. And the vertices in turn have geometry associated with that in terms of the coordinates. Right? And so this separation is something that we had already talked about, right? Where we said that in the case of the surface, I have the boundary of the region that is of interest to me, which is represented like this in the parametric space. So 0, 1, 0, 1, and this is represented as edges, a list of edges. Okay. And this can be embedded in any geometry, a geometry that looks like this, or a geometry that looks like that, or a geometry that looks like this. Your idea here is also essentially the same thing, right? The information that I have, let me just see if I have a sketch next to it so that I don't have to draw it again. Okay. No, I don't have that. So let me make do with this picture then, right? So I have my boundary representation in terms of these entities that I have just defined. Vertex, which is the boundary of an edge which constitutes a boundary of a face, and the face itself, which constitutes the boundary of the solid, and that's what we are interested in, right? So for the solid, I have a list of faces. For each face, I have a list of edges, and for each edge, I have a list of vertices, right? So in this instance, my boundary representation would look somewhat like this. So I have a solid, and the solid consists of a list of faces, F1, F2, to 6 faces, right? So those are the 6 faces here. So I have 1, I have 2, I have 3, 4, 5, 6. Those are the faces. Okay. Now each face, so for example, this is 1, I have highlighted. Each face in turn, right, constitutes of edges like this. I'm going to label them as E1, E2, E3, E4. Right? And remember, we had said that the boundary of the face also will be oriented in a consistent manner, that as you traverse the boundary, the material is always to the left. And so that orientation is preserved here, E2, E3, E4, and that's the next item. And then each edge in turn, unfortunately here I have stored E2, so this is E2, and so I'll drop that down here, and it has this as the representation, V1, V2, the 2 endpoints. Okay. So this represents, in some sense, the connectivity or the topology of the elements. Right? Now each face will have this set of edges. Now I want to use a slightly different color, but we'll also have surface. Right? So in this case, since I only have 4 edges, the face 1 could look like this. It could look like that, right? Or it could look like that, right? All these cases correspond to different surface equations on which there are these 4 edges, which is E1, E2, E3, and E4. Right? And as you can see, each edge in turn is between 2 vertices, but it can be a curve that looks like this. It can be a curve that looks like that. It can be a curve that looks like that. So V1, V2, but any one of these can be the edge E2. right? So this flow that you have seen here, right, where I have a face formed by 4 edges, right? But the face can look like this, a plane or a curved surface like that. And each edge is between 2 vertices, but it can take a form which is like this, or like this, right? So just to complete the piece, everything in orange here has to do with geometry, and everything in green here has to do with topology or connectivity. And I hope you recollect that that example that I gave you about the surface, trimmed surface case, where I said that the topology can be seen as a cookie cutter. Right? You can cut it to cut a cookie, which is a plain surface, a plain sheet of dough, a sheet of dough which is mounted on the outside of the vessel, and a sheet of dough which is mounted on the inside of the vessel, right? And you will get different shapes. Here you will get a planar surface which has this form. Here you get a curved surface which has this form, and here you have a slightly differently curved surface which has a form like that. So geometry is varying here, right? And this is the same topology. And same thing can happen in 3D as well, right? I can have this relationship that I have written here in green, but with different orange expressions, I may get a 3D object that looks like this, or a 3D object that looks like that, right? Both have the same green information, meaning that, let me just quickly label this phase 1, phase 1. This is E1, E2, E3, E4. This is also E1, E2, E3, E4. The only difference between these is that the geometry associated with E1 here is a line, geometry associated with E1 here is a curve. Only this changes, and I get a different object. Okay, so that's the representation of a solid, where I have the ability to represent the solid by only its boundary, but oriented boundary. So that what I mean by that is that I have this notion that the normal is pointing like that, so the material is always, towards the inside. So this represents a solid brick or a solid bread piece, loaf of bread. Okay. Now, what we have done is that we wanted to represent a solid which is a infinite set of points, bounded set of points, right? So a solid for us is a bounded infinite set of points. But we don't try to represent the infinite set, rather we have a slightly different finite representation, where we say that my object is represented by the bounding surfaces, and just one second, is by its bounding surfaces, and therefore I get away by not having to represent the interior, the points that is being bound by the boundary at all. Because I represent the boundary and I say that my point lies below my feet. If I'm standing here, below my feet, if I'm standing there, that gives me a representation of the interior. I don't have to worry about it. So in some sense, it turns out then that this is an indirect representation. I'm not directly representing the points of interest to me. I'm representing a boundary of the points of interest to me. Okay, so that's what is listed here, which is that my shape now is actually a set of points, but I don't use the set of points. I use a subset of that point set to represent the object. And the subset of the object is, or the point set is nothing but the boundary of points. Now, this can lead to some interesting problems. Okay, so let me just illustrate one of them, and then we will see how to overcome this problem. The problem I have in mind is the following. In fact, I will list two problems. So let's go back to that simple example of a cube. Okay. Remember, we said that this is 6 faces. So let's say I assign this job to six of you, saying each of you will design one face and give it to me, and my job will be to put them together and form the solid. Okay, representation. This is the task that has been given, and let's say that you start giving me the inputs back, and I keep putting them together. So I get the bottom face, I get the front face, I get the side face, I get the back face, and I get the left face. Okay. So meaning that I get, when I say I get this face, which one will you take? This one, right? Yeah. So E1, E2, E3, E4. Likewise, I may get some E2, E3, I mean E5, E6, E7, and so forth. Okay. And I say this is my boundary representation. Right? So I have these faces. And I have these edges around the faces, and I have the vertices around the edges, and everything is a straight line or linear, so I don't have to worry about geometry. I just leave it. Do I have a bounded solid now? In this case? Anybody? How many of you think that the result of the exercise that I did, where I asked you to get the faces and I assembled the faces to form the boundary or the bounding surface of the solid, I have a valid solid, meaning a bound solid? Any thoughts? I don't know how many of you noticed this, right? But I started by saying that somebody sent me the front face, somebody sent me the left, the right, the bottom, and the back. Right? Now, if you count that, I have only 5 faces. The person who was supposed to send me the top face has not done that yet. And yet, I sort of in my rush have concluded that this is the bounding representation of a cube. But clearly, it is not a cube, right? Because there is a big hole here, right? And so it is not a bound solid at all. The question now is that how does the system know that while it has some boundary representation, this boundary representation does not represent a solid, right? So I may have thought, because each of you sent me, the edges and the vertices corresponding to this face and each and every other face, I stopped, assuming that the 6th one has also come, or perhaps I didn't even know that there was a 6th one. I just assembled these and told the system that, yeah, here is the B-rep. But clearly this is not the B-rep of a valid solid, and that the system must know. Right? So that's one problem. Okay. And while this may seem like a very, sort of a toy and synthetic example, right? You may wonder who is going to miss a face like this, right? I will show you another manifestation of this problem, which is more likely to occur. But just appreciate this problem for a minute. The second problem, right, is remember we said that same exercise. Each of you, 6 of you have to make these faces, and it is my job to sort of put them together and say that construct the boundary of the 3D volume, which is the brick or a cuboid in this case. Now, I don't know if we mentioned this when we were doing the surfaces, but let me just say it now, which is that if I have a surface corresponding to one of the faces, typically, I have a U direction here and a V direction there. And you will take, in the case of a surface definition, the normal is always taken to be U cross V. Right? So if you take a right-hand rule, and do u cross v, that is the direction of the normal. This is just a convention in some solid modeling systems. You will see these small two arrows at one corner of the surface patch that tells you what the u and v directions are. And from there, you can automatically infer that the normal to that surface patch, as the system thinks, is in the direction from u cross v, which is this direction here. Now, supposing I do this same exercise that I said just now, give 6 of you the task of modeling these 6 faces and sending it back to me. And I'm going to draw them in a slightly exploded view here, right? So the first person sends it to me. He had taken this and this to be the UV directions, therefore the normal points like this, right? The second person, let me draw it in a slightly exploded manner there, right? Takes this to be the U direction and that to be the V direction, and therefore the normal points like this. And the third person, right, who is designing this face, which was actually missing the last time, but in this case, somebody has turned this face in, right? And takes this to be the U direction and this to be the V direction. And what happens now? The normal is pointing like that. So they just send me the faces. I assemble it and say, here is my solid. Okay. So I'm not drawn the other 3 faces, but assume that they are all there and they have some normals in this direction, the way it is drawn here. So you have 2 cases which are extremely possible, right? One where I have assembled it without a face, and in the second case, I am having this problem where some faces have their normal pointing one way and some faces have their normal pointing the other way. Now here you can clearly appreciate that this does not represent a solid at all, right? It is not a closed bound solid. Here, what is the problem? What is being violated here? If you recall, we said that the solid model is an unambiguous representation, right? And the unambiguity is with respect to the material containment, meaning that if I start from some point in the boundary of the solid, I sort of, look at where the material is, you will see that there is a flip when I come to this face here, right? When I'm walking from here to here, the material is at my feet because the normal is pointing up, material is, in the inside, normal points away from the material. But when I come to the top face, suddenly, the material is not at my feet, it is actually above my head. All right. And therefore, the material containment information is not unambiguous. And therefore, there is a problem here. Okay. So these are 2 problems that you can encounter when you are actually trying to assemble the bounding representation or the boundary representation of a solid. And these problems happen because I'm not representing the solid directly, I'm representing it indirectly, and therefore I could end up in a situation where my BREP does not actually represent a closed solid, and here my BREP is not representing a consistent material information. It's confusing me, right? And the last example that I want to show you is also at this point in time a very, what I might say, synthetic example, but nevertheless, I believe an important one. So let's say you design a BREP, a part, which is your brick. Okay, that's your solid. And you sort of chisel out a pyramid from the top. Okay, that's my solid. So you define your faces, your vertices and everything else, and then you construct the BREP and everything is fine. But supposing, let's say this is vertex V13. Okay, so V13, you have some X, Y, and Z, but you make a mistake in the Z and the vertex ends up here. Okay. So how does that, what happens then? Remember, the connectivity information is still the same, and therefore this edge is formed by these 2 vertices, this edge is formed by these 2 vertices, this edge is formed by these 2 vertices, And that edge is now formed by those two vertices. And I get an object that looks like this. Okay. Now this, where I have a sort of a pyramid scooped out from the top face, is a valid solid. Right? There's nothing wrong with it. You might have seen objects like these. But this is definitely not a valid object. This is an invalid solid. Right? And the only sort of mistake that has happened here is that the value of Z13 sort of maybe should have been, 5, probably it became -5 or something like that. Just a simple mistake and you end up with an invalid solid. Okay, so what is the point behind these three examples? The point behind these three examples is what is being said here in this slide. Oh, why did I not shut this? Okay, is what is being said here in this slide, right? So the problem is that the interest that we have is in representing the set of points occupied by the object. But the shortcut we take is that we represent a bounding surface as the representation, not the entire point set. And because of that, we have these three problems where I might have a situation where the solid is not, it's not a valid solid, it's not a closed solid, it is not an ambiguous material information solid, nor is it a feasible solid, right? Because I cannot have a solid where faces intersect with the other face. Okay, I cannot have a situation like this. And so what we do is we impose some conditions of validity. So we impose these validity conditions on the boundary representation, primarily to ensure that the boundary representation indeed represents a valid solid. A valid solid meaning a closed, unambiguous representation. Right? So let's see how this is done. Right? Now, the first problem that we saw here, right, where one of the faces was missing, let me ask you, right, how do you find out the fact that there is a face missing? So if I pass you a boundary representation, right, of a solid here, which I wrote down, right, only thing that this F6 is not there at all, right? How will you determine, automatically, or how will the computer know that you have not actually constructed the boundary of a closed solid? How will it work? What will the check be? Anyone has a guess?
Sir, the repetitiveness of the edges, because all the other faces have repeated edges once we represent them.
Good. What do you mean by repeated edges? Just to make it clear to your colleagues. So in this example.
So for example, if we consider the front face and the right face, so here
yes.
the E2 is being repeated.
Yes.
So
good.
If we do not have the top face, then that means the edges not being repeated.
Excellent. So indeed, that is a check, right? The condition that we actually want, right, is that the bounding surface must be a closed surface. That's the condition we want, right? That the bounding surface should be a closed surface. Now, what do we mean by a closed surface? By a closed surface, we mean that if I take any path on the bounding surface, right, it doesn't matter in any direction, I must be able to complete the path without falling off the surface. So here, if I walk around on the side faces, I can do that without falling. But the moment I come here, then I have nowhere to go but to fall off the surface. And therefore, this is not a closed surface. But clearly, while this is a good definition of a closed surface, that I can traverse a closed path on the boundary without getting off the boundary, it is not a useful definition for me to detect this problem. The check actually is what your colleague just said, which is that every edge in my face, right, in my boundary model must be represented in two faces, right? So E2 is in part of the is in the representation of the front face and the representation of the right face. E4 is part of the front face and the left face. E1 is in the front face and the bottom face. But when I come to E3 here, right, it is part of only one face, which is the front face. It is not incident on any other face. And that tells you that the bounding surface is not closed. Okay, so it's a check to find. It is not fixing it yet, but it is a check to find it. So that's the first problem, right? What about the second case where, I have a claim that my solid is not. So let me just have an example here. What happened to my figures? Oh, sorry, I'm continuing the same file. Should I move to the next one? Sorry. We did all this in the previous one. This is the one I wanted. Yeah. So the same situation here, right? The front face is missing. Here, the front face is not missing, but part of this hole is missing. The cylinder is made with two halves and one half is missing, right? So you will typically get this report from the CAD system where it will say that there is a missing face and it will, sort of identify the edges which don't have another face. Remember, we said that each edge must have two faces, and this will list all the edges which is missing another face. And as you can see here, there will be 5 such edges. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. There is a small chamfer here, if you can make out. And therefore, you have 5 edges, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 edges that are missing a face. Okay. So that's the check, that every face must be incident, every edge must be incident on two faces. But if I have a situation where there are some edges in my boundary model which is only on one face, then I have a problem of a missing face. Okay. So this rule is simple to implement because all you need to do is just march through the boundary structure of this object and count for each edge if it is in two faces or not. The second problem, let me go. That's a dumb mistake. Let me repeat it here then. Sorry. I should have started here. I'll just draw that picture here, right? The exploded view that we had, right? So this is U and V, and therefore the normal is like that. And we said that this is U and that is V, and therefore the normal is like that. And the top face, right, has U and V, and therefore the normal is like that. Okay. So in this case, again, we know the problem is that my normal is not consistent, right? Which means that my information about material containment is not consistent. How do we identify that I have a problem like this? What can we do? Any thoughts? Well, let me give you the mathematical answer first, and then let's see if you can come up with a thing based on that hint. So what we want to insist now here is that my notion of material containment must be consistent all the way through, meaning that I want my bounding surface to be orientable, right? And what I mean by that is that in the material containment does not change along a closed path. Meaning, as you walk around the boundary of the object, if you start with your material at the feet, as in this case on this face, it should always remain under your feet, no matter which direction you take a path from here. You can walk like this, you can walk like that, it must always be the same. But here you have a problem. You walk like this, it seems okay, but when you walk like this, immediately the material information has flipped. Here it was at your feet, here it is above, the head. And therefore this object is not orientable, a bounding surface is not orientable, and therefore it does not represent a valid solid. Now, a simple example is that if you take a strip of paper, right, and sort of join cross vertices, right, you will end up getting a strip that looks like this, and this joins there. And so if I start with the, here with the pencil pointing that way, and I go, with my pen pointing out like that, right? And these are all pointing outwards. And when you come inside, right, it starts flipping, and you come to the same point and the normal has flipped, right? So I start with the normal pointing out, and I sort of go in, the normal changes the direction, which is at this point. It was pointing away like this, but when I came back here, it is pointing now like this. So this is a classic example of a surface that is not orientable. And this is only for historical and academic interest that I'm sharing this. And this was due to a person called Mobius, and hence it is known as the Mobius strip. Okay. So this is an example of a surface that is not orientable, and this is an example of a bounding surface that is not orientable, where the normals of the faces are not consistently organized. Now the question is, what is your check? Do you have any check? Because clearly you cannot go do this part, right? You cannot implement a routine which will go every direction and check if the material normal direction is consistent or not. That is definitely not possible, right? So how do we then fix this problem? Can anybody suggest a check which is easy to implement? Any thoughts? Okay, let me then sketch an answer, and hopefully you will get it before I finish it. Now, if I look at this face here, right, the normal is pointing out, and the sort of representation of the boundary of this face will look like this. Right, that's the traversal of edges, so that my normal is pointing that way, right, consistently. And here, what is going to happen? My normal is pointing out, and therefore my traversal of edges will look like this. Right? And here, because my normal is pointing in, my traversal of edges will look like this. Okay, does that give you a clue? Look at what is happening.
The adjacent direction should be opposite if we take
precisely. So that's the check you need to have. You already know that my edge lies on two faces. Now the additional check you have to do is that when it is traversed in the two adjacent faces, it must be done in opposite directions. Okay, so actually it turns out I have a picture here. I should have used it. Anyway, doesn't matter, right? So I have this normals pointing, wrong way. And if you look at draw the directions of the traversal of the edges here, for this face, the edges will be traversed like that. So the normal is going in, right? And for normal is pointing away from the material, sorry. And here also, if the normal is pointing away, my edges look like this. Right? So if you see this edge, it is being traversed in this direction in this face, and it is being traversed in this direction in this face. Now I have a case where the bottom face here, let me pull this up a bit. On the bottom face here, the normal is pointing inwards, and therefore again, my traversal of edges in the bottom face is like this. And you can see here that this edge, which belongs to the bottom face and the left face, is being traversed in the same direction, and therefore I have a problem. Okay. And so we have these rules, which I think I have produced somewhere. Yeah, here. So for the check for validity is, like I said, the object must be closed. Therefore, what I mean by that is that a closed path must be traversed while traversing in any direction along the boundary. But this is not a check. It's only a definition of closed. The check is here, that each edge is incident on exactly two faces. So that is easy to do because, for every face in my list, I have all the edges that lie on that face. And so I count once when I come here. Then when I come to F2 and I see E1, I count increase the count as 2. And at the end of traversal of all the faces, every edge in my object must have a count of 2. Otherwise, I know I have a problem. Likewise, I expect my bounding surface to be orientable, right? And again, the definition of orientable is that the notion of material containment cannot change while you are traversing a closed path, right? That was the definition. But implementation is that each edge is traversed in opposite directions in the two faces it is incident on, right? So if I have a common edge, then in one face, if it is traversed in this direction, in the other face, it must be traversed in the other direction. And this takes the name after the Mobius strip. It takes the name as the Mobius rule. Okay. Now, the third problem, right? Sorry, here. That I had mentioned, right? I wasted that drawing there. I should have probably done it here. I left this slide for that and I completely forgot. Sorry. But anyway, let me just draw it again. And I will, 1 second, let me just kill this. This problem that we had was the following, right? That I have an object, right, which was originally, chiseled out like that, but due to a mistake in the location of this vertex, which went here, I ended up having an object like that. Okay. So the check for this, as it turns out, is very straightforward. Again, I'm going the wrong direction, sorry. Here. The check is that faces in the boundary model will intersect at edges in the model, and edges in the boundary model will intersect at vertices in the model. What I mean by that is drawn right here. If I look at the intersection of these two faces, I get this edge, and this edge is already part of the model. If I look at the intersection of this edge and this edge, I get this vertex, and this is already part of the model. So that is correct. And it is true for all the faces and all the edges, right? Whereas if I look at my boundary model here, right, and if I look at the intersection of this face, right, this dashed face here, and the bottom face, let me just draw that fully. Right? Then I get a intersection edge, right, which is here. Actually, right, this edge. And that is not an edge in my boundary model. Likewise, the intersection of this pyramidal face on the back with the bottom face will give me an edge like that, and I get another edge here like this and another edge like that. All of these are not edges in my original boundary model, right? So these are all not in the BREP, right? Because my BREP is only consisting of this vertex and these edges, and the faces are, already defined. These edges are not defined in my BREP at all, but they are coming because of intersection of two faces. And therefore, I know that my object bounding model is not correct. Okay, so that's the check that my faces in the boundary model intersected the edges and edges intersected vertices in the model. But unlike the other two ones, right, where I had a very complex condition, right, or a definition, but a very simple implementation, right? There is no computation involved in this implementation. I just have to march through all the faces, look at all the edges, keep a count, and I'm done, right? But for this, unfortunately, there is no simplicity. You will actually have to find intersection of edges and faces and check if those edges or vertices are in the boundary model or not. That's the only check possible. Okay, so summarize. Because I am going in a slightly indirect way in my representation, I'm not representing all the set of points occupied by the object. I'm only using the boundary, right, the bounding surface to represent the object. There is a possibility, like I said, that the bounding surface may not represent a valid solid. And I show you 3 examples of that. Now, to prevent that, we insist on these 3 conditions on the bounding surface. That the bounding surface be closed, the bounding surface be orientable, and the bounding surface be non-self-intersecting. Those are the 3 conditions we impose. And the way we check for those 3 conditions is that for closed, we check that each edge is incident on exactly 2 faces. For orientable, we check that each edge is traversed in opposite directions in the 2 faces it is incident on. But unfortunately, for non-self-intersecting check, we actually have to do intersection of faces, edges to find the resulting edges and vertices, and then compare them with all the edges and vertices in the object and make sure that they are not new. Right? Now, before I start talking about the problems associated with this, let me give you an example of a classical self-intersecting surface, bounding surface, which is the Klein's bottle. Okay, if you go to the net, you will see some transparent renderings of this. But essentially, what is happening is that your bottom is sort of connected to the neck or the top of the glass, right? So the top of the glass is then folded into the object and taken out from the back. Right? It's not a real object, but it's an example of a self-intersecting bounding surface. Right? This represents the bounding surface of the object, but it intersects itself. So this is a classical example, right? But our examples are more mundane of the type, of the type where we make mistakes with locations of vertices, etc. But the main takeaway from this, right, is the fact that this check, the last check here, is very cumbersome. Right? You have already seen that intersection of faces is not easy. Okay, here the faces are all linear and therefore it is not too much of a problem. Right? We can do intersections, but nevertheless, right, for you to do exact arithmetic and then compare that the 2 edges are identical, that is not straightforward. Right? It's a lot of work. Right? So you have to basically find this edge and then compare this edge with every edge in the object and see if it is matching any of them or not, and then conclude that it is not self-intersecting. And so for complex objects, then this becomes a problem. Okay. Now, why do I insist on this? Because the conclusion from this, what do you think should the conclusion be from this last observation? Well, the conclusion is somewhat similar to the conclusion that we had with the spatial enumeration models. Right? That it is going to be rather difficult to construct the boundary representation from scratch. So just like in the spatial enumeration case, we concluded that the ab initio construction is not easy. The same conclusion has to be drawn for the BREP as well. That if you try to construct the BREP of an object from scratch, it is not easy. So let's look at this an example here, right? I have a square pyramid, right? And you can imagine, right, the construction of the boundary representation of this would involve you to define these 5 vertices, right? We want to be. Is it a different object or what? Where did the 6 come from? I think I made a mistake here. Just one second. I think I made a mistake here. I may have cut and paste the. It looks mostly right, but I don't know where the 6th vertex is coming. This is a mistake. We'll just check for a minute. Okay. But the point I want to make is the fact that you have to define these 5 vertices, right? And then define these edges, right? So I have 4 on the top and 4 on the bottom, 8 edges between these vertices. Yeah, so this is not correct, right? And so you need to define the connections that define the edges, and then you define the edges that form the vertices to get the BREP of the object. Now, if it's a linear object, then the only geometry you have to prescribe is this. You don't have to prescribe the geometry of the edge or the face because they can be easily inferred from the vertices. The 2 vertices will give me the equation of the line, and 2 edges will give me the equation of the plane, and therefore, you know, I don't have to worry about it. That's only because it is linear. If it was not linear, then yes, you would have had to do some more work and do this. So it is. We'll worry about that in a minute. But the point I want to make here is that to define a simple object like a square pyramid, right, you have to define 5 vertices, right, 8 edges, and then 5 faces again. Right. So in some sense, for you, this is about 18 operations. And that's a lot, right? And at the end of it, you still have to go back and run the validity checks. Because it is not guaranteed, right? You may have made a mistake, just like the example that we said, that the vertex went from there to somewhere else, right? You may have a problem. And therefore, after defining these 18 operations, you have to do the validity check. Now, the first and the second, the closed and the orientable, are not too bad. We don't complain about that because all they have to do is march through these edges, faces, and look at the edge, keep a count, and you're done. Right? But the last one, non-self-intersecting, you know, you have to now do 5 into 4, 20 by 2, 10 intersections for faces, and 28 intersections for the edges, right? So this is 5 into 4, 20 by 2. So 10 intersections here, and it is 8 into 7, 56 by 2. So 28 intersections here, right? So 18 operations and then 38 intersections. That's a lot of effort to define just a square pyramid. And that's why, you know, we will not use we will not construct the BREP. Meaning we won't expect the user to construct the BREP. So this is the same thing you saw in the case of the surface as well. The 3D control point grid is very hard for you to define, and therefore, while the representation is still the surface, we construct it. Construction is with curves. Same way here, right? While our representation is complete, BREP as a representation is complete, its construction will be somewhat different. And that we will pick it up in the next class. I will stop here. If you have any quick questions, then we will take it now. Any questions? Okay, if there are no questions, then I'll do a recap and then again give you a chance to ask the questions.
Sir?
Yes? Yeah?
Where to submit the Paganol exercise? Can we submit on Wednesday?
You can submit it by Wednesday, and I will have the information sent out to you today.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So Wednesday, yes, again, please assemble at 2. This week also, maybe I will let the instructions happen by both Deval and Kidir. Kidir has a small problem, but I'm hoping that he'll be up to it. I'll just check that and confirm. But we will meet at 2 o'clock for the instructions on the tool. Okay. And I will continue with this next Monday. There is another thing that I want you to think about and let me know, which is that we need to have a quiz on the curves portion of it. It will be a 1 hour quiz. We'll do it online. So you need to tell me a date. I would ideally not like to do it during the class hours if I can avoid it. But if it causes a problem to all of you, then of course I will respond. But if you can give me a slot, then let's do that. So please tell me in the next, by end of next week, we need to have the quiz on curves. Okay, only on curves. It will be an online quiz for about an hour. Okay. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Please let me know on Wednesday whenever we meet. Thanks. All the best. Yeah. Yeah, we can leave.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.